Hey, today I'm going to show you how I create this colored honeycomb effect in Procreate. I'm going to create a new canvas and I'm going to do it in inches, and I'm going to make it 14 by 11 inches big, and I'm going to leave the DPI at 300, which gives me 34 layers on my iPad. You might get more or less depending on your iPad. And the color profile, I'm going to use the generic CMYK profile, and then we'll just create that one. I'm going to drag and drop this brown colour onto the canvas for my background colour, and then create a new layer above that, and then we'll go to the actions panel and insert a photo, and I'm going to insert this bee PNG that I have, and I'll leave the link for that in the description. You can download it for free from my website. So we'll pop that in there and it should just come up as just the outline. And then I'm going to duplicate that one, and then the top one I'm going to change the colour of that to this orange colour. So we'll choose the orange and then drag and drop that colour onto the bee outline, and then drag your pen across so it fills in all of that bee and doesn't leave any black lines. Then I'm going to select the bottom layer and turn that top layer off, and also fill in the outline of this bottom layer with the same orange colour, and then I'm going to also fill in the inside of that bee with the orange colour as well. So now we have a stroke layer and a solid colour layer. I'm just going to grab this second yellow colour I have here and drag and drop that onto the bee to change it to yellow. And I'll leave the link for these colours, these exact colours, in the description as well. I'm going to create a new clipping mask layer above that one and choose this first yellow colour here. And I'm going to choose this honeycomb brush that I have, which I will also leave in the description, a link to download this one for free. You can also get it for free on my Gumroad as well. Once you've got it all on there, you can make it bigger or smaller. I suggest, if you don't want to do very much shading, to make the honeycomb shapes big, or if you want to do lots, to make them small, or I'm just going to keep them sort of this medium size, I guess. And I'm going to create another clipping mask layer just above that bee layer, but underneath that honeycomb layer that I just did. I'm going to choose the orange colour again, and I'm going to use my soft brush from my Enchanted brush pack. I'm going to start adding some of this orange colour, browny orange colour, onto the bottom left of each of these honeycombs. And I have my brush set at 6%. You can have bigger or smaller, whatever's comfortable for you. But I'm going to have it so that the light is kind of coming from the top right-hand side. So this is going to be the darker side of the honeycomb. So we're going to do all the shading on the bottom left. So we'll just go around on the bottom left of all of these honeycombs. And I know this is like time consuming, but I don't know, you get through it. It's listen to a good music or audiobook or something, and it doesn't take that long. It doesn't feel like it takes that long anyway. And boom, all done. That doesn't take long. Now I'll create another new layer above that one, and I'm going to choose the second yellow, first yellow in the colour palette, and we're going to go in and do the lighter yellow colours in the top right hand corner of all of these honeycombs. So same kind of process, but the opposite. And they don't have to be shaded together super perfect, because after this we're going to come back and we're going to blend them all. And now that's all done. I feel like my first one started off like really nice, and then they got rougher and rougher the further along I went. Now we're going to merge those two layers together, and we're going to use the smudge tool that looks like a little finger up the top there, and I'm going to use my blending brush from my Enchanted brush pack, and we're going to go in and we're going to blend those colours together so that they're nice and smooth. And when I'm using the blending brush to blend the colours together, I don't really put heaps of pressure on the brush. It's sort of kind of a medium to light amount of pressure that I'm using to blend the colours together. And again, I know this is quite a time consuming process, but it's definitely worth it in the end. Now that that's all done, I'm going to duplicate the honeycomb outline layer, and on the bottom one I'm going to turn alpha lock on and choose this dark brown colour, and then click it and click fill layer to change that whole layer to that dark brown colour. Turn alpha lock off, and then I'm going to use the selection tool and I'm going to drag it down very like a small amount to the bottom bottom left, just so it gives that little bit of shadow, a little bit of dimension. And if it keeps trying to snap too far, just click snapping and turn snapping off so that you can move it a little bit without it like trying to snap to something. And that's the hardest and most time consuming part done. Now I'm going to show you how I make the outside stroke look like it's like rounded a little bit. So I'm going to choose the outside B stroke, and I'm going to change it to this yellowy orange color. And then I'm going to duplicate that layer 2 times. And we'll make both of those duplicates clipping masks. And change the bottom one to multiply, and change the top one to screen. And we'll turn the top one off and grab the multiply layer, and we'll use the selection tool, and we're going to move it down slightly to the bottom left. So I just tapped it down slightly, and you can see it's created this little line there. And we're going to go to the blur, and we're going to blur it just a little bit. 3% I did. And then we're going to do the same to the screen layer, but we're going to move it to the top right instead. So grab the selection tool and move it up a little bit to the top right. And you can see it's created that little bit of a lip there. And then we're going to use the blur tool again and blur it a little bit, 3% again, 4%. So it gives it that rounded sort of look. And then I'm just going to turn the opacity of the screen layer down a little bit until it looks good. You can do whatever you like. I did about 77%. And I'm going to choose the main layer B. I'm just going to rename it to stroke. And I'm going to duplicate it and change the color of the bottom one to a very dark brown. I'll put it next to this brown here. And I'm just going to drag and drop that in onto that stroke, drag it across to fill that in. And then I'm going to use the selection tool, and I'm going to move that down to the bottom left just a little bit, and then blur that out also a little bit to give a little bit of shadow to that rounded stroke that we just made. And I'm going to turn the opacity of that down to about 55% and make it a clipping mask onto the main layer B, the back B. The main layer B. Okay, now I'm going to duplicate that first B that we did, the yellow B, duplicate that, and we're going to change the color of the bottom one to this dark brown color that I just used, and then we're going to move that down with the selection tool to the bottom left to create that, give the B a 3D look. And I'm going to get my fine pen extra streamline. I'm just going to go and connect that 3D layer to the top layer, just anywhere they need to be connected. I actually think I'm going to change the 3D layer a little bit lighter color, and I'm going to create a new layer above that and make it a clipping mask, and I'll add this brown to the color palette as well. I'm going to choose this darker brown again, and I'm going to add some shading in with my grain brush. Actually, let's make that new layer for the shading a multiply layer. Now I'm just going to go and add some shading in everywhere the light's not really going to hit, so everywhere that's kind of on the bottom left side of that letter, I'm going to add shading in. I'm just going to go and turn the opacity of that layer down a little bit. It's like 72%, just a little bit, so it's just lightly shaded. Now I'm going to go just above our honeycomb shading layer. I'm going to create a new layer on top of that, and I'm going to change the layer mode to add. And then I'm going to choose this light yellow color here, and I'm going to choose my Stardust shader and add some highlights to the honeycomb. It's way too small. We'll turn it up a little bit more, about 15%. That looks good. I'm just going to lightly shade the top right hand side of those honeycombs. And I'm just pressing quite lightly with the shading brush to add in just a little bit of light highlights, not pressing too hard. Now I'm going to grab this stroke, the honeycomb stroke layer that we made, and I want to cut it out of the main layer B to try and give it the same rounded effect that we did for the stroke. So to do that, we're going to click on our main B layer and we're going to click select, and then we're going to click invert down the bottom here, which you can see it like selects the inside part of the B. Now we're going to go back to our honeycomb stroke layer, click on it, and then swipe down on the screen with 3 fingers and click copy and paste. And that's going to copy and paste cut the honeycomb out of that B layer. So you can see it's got the inside and the outside are like cut separately now. So if we turn that clipping mask off, we can see all of that outside part of the honeycomb. We can turn that layer off and we can delete that. So now we have just that honeycomb stroke there. That's the exact shape of that letter B. So I'm just going to move it above that shadow layer that we did and then make that a clipping mask again. And I want to do the same with this layer as what we did with the stroke layer up here. So we're going to have 3 layers. So we're going to duplicate it twice and make them both clipping masks. And then the bottom clipping mask will make multiply layer and the top one will make a screen layer. And we'll turn our screen layer off and grab our multiply layer and the selection tool, and we'll move it to the bottom left a little bit. Just only needs to be like the smallest amount to create that little lip of shadow on there. And then we'll use the blur a little bit, and we'll only blur it like 2%. Only tiny amount. And then we'll grab our screen layer again and we'll turn that back on and we'll move that up to the top right. The same process. And then we'll blur it a little bit as well. And then we'll turn the opacity of that layer down to about 77%. I'm just going to merge our honeycomb stroke and our main layer stroke layers all together and create a new layer above that honeycomb stroke, make it a clipping mask and make it an add layer mode. And I'm going to choose this yellow color and I'm going to use my grain brush and I'm just going to add a little bit of that. I'm going to make it quite big, and add just little dots of that around. It kind of gives like a glittery sparkly effect to the stroke layer, which I really like. And I'm going to do the same thing for the main stroke, so a new clipping mask layer on top of that and make it layer mode add. And still with the grain brush, I'm just going to go around and add a little bit of that glittery sparkle to the outside stroke as well. Now we're going to create a new layer above that honeycomb stroke layer and grab this orangey yellow color, sorry. And I'm going to use my soft brush and make it quite small. And we're going to draw in some little honey drips coming out of the honeycomb. So we'll just draw like a little droopy shape and fill it in with color. And then I'm going to create a clipping mask above that one and we'll grab this orangey color and my soft brush and we'll go around the edges of that with a little bit of shading to give it a 3D look. just lightly, and then I'll add like a little drippy bit in the middle of it as well. And I'm going to grab my blending brush and I'll just blend that out. And I'll grab this bright yellow colour here and go around and add some highlights into that honeycomb. The honey drip. The drip of honey. And I'll just lightly add that in and then use my smudging tool to blend it out. And then I'll get my eraser and the soft brush and back to the main layer, and I'll make it quite big, and then I'll erase like the top sort of half of that honeycomb drip that we drew, and then so it blends into the back of the honeycomb, and then I'll lightly erase the rest of it so it's like a little bit see-through, so you can see a little bit of the underneath. Then I'll create a new layer above that and make it an add layer. And I will use this bright yellow again and my soft brush, and I'll add some really bright highlights onto that drip. I'll just blur those out a little bit with the cushion blur. And then you can go and add, you can just duplicate that whole thing and then move it around, merge it all down, and then duplicate it and move it around instead of redrawing heaps of them. Or you can draw different ones, wherever you want over the bee. But yeah, save time by just merging them and duplicating it and moving it around. Once you've done all your honey drips, I'm going to duplicate this 3D layer that we did of the bee. I'm going to make it a really dark colour. Oops, not the background. I'm going to make it a really dark colour. And then I'm going to use the selection tool and we're going to move it down again to the bottom left. And we're going to create a shadow. Once you have it in place, we're going to go to the Gaussian blur and we're going to blur it out a little bit. Go to like 14%, and then go back into our adjustments and we're going to go motion blur, and we're going to drag it down to the bottom left to give it that bit of motion, blurred motion. Or you can drag it to the top right, still gives you the same look. So either way, bottom left, top right. I'm going to go bottom left, drag it down to give it that look, moved shadow, cast shadow look. And then I'm just going to change the opacity down a little bit. Perfect. Now for some fun, we're going to add in some colours. So create a new layer above our main bee layer, above all of those, and make it a clipping mask. I'm going to choose my soft brush and make it quite big. And I'm going to start off with this blue. I'm going to put all these colours into the colour palette for you guys, so you guys will have that. So just going to start randomly putting colours in. I'm going to go blue, purple, and you can do any colours you want. You don't have to stick with these colours that I'm using. Okay, once we have all of our colours on there and we're happy with where they are, I'm going to change the layer mode to colour. And you can go through the layer modes. I'm going to turn the opacity down a little bit as well. But you can also go through the layer modes and see which layer mode works best for your colours. But the colour layer mode is generally a good one. But sometimes some of the other layer modes come up with really cool different effects. And then you can just go in and add more colour wherever you think you want to change it. And then I'm going to duplicate that layer and I'm going to move it up to our honey drips layer, which I've all merged all mine together, and I'm going to make it a clipping mask on those as well, so then it makes those honey drips the same colour as that honeycomb underneath. I'm going to duplicate one of my colour layers and I'm going to move it all the way down to the bottom, just above my background colour layer. and I'm going to make it really big so it covers the whole canvas. Then I'm going to create a new layer underneath, and I'm going to choose white. I'm going to choose my clouds brush. I'm going to go in and put some clouds in behind that colour for a cool little coloured background. I'm just going to turn that shadow layer, the cast shadow layer we did, down a little bit, the opacity down a little bit, and add in some more colour using the clouds brush this time. And there's no right or wrong to this, it's just however you want to do it, however you think it looks cool. And I'm going to duplicate my colour layer again, and I'm going to put it onto that 3D layer to give it a little bit of colour as well. And that's up to you, you can leave it brown or change it a different colour, whatever you prefer. I think that's a bit too bright. I'll make it a little bit darker. That looks good. We'll leave it like that. And of course we need to add some stars in. So I'm going to grab my stars brush, and I'm going to create a new layer above everything and use a white colour and add some stars. I usually add in heaps of stars and then use my soft brush as the eraser and then go around and erase the ones I don't want. And if you do create this honeycomb effect and you want to share it, I would love to see it. So feel free to tag me or send it to me or anything you like. Now all it needs is some little bees and some flowers. And that's how I create my coloured honeycomb effect in Procreate. Thanks for watching, guys.